but just getting kids excited about this great adventure that's out there that they could be part of if they learn their science. But anyway, I'll go for Heinlein's young adult work.
Of course, by being last, I'm cursed with, thinking of all these possibilities, so I have to mention all these possibilities. Okay, first of all, let us present company has to be accepted, because I really think that two of my panelists work with Mars novels have definitely shown how realism can really reign, and I'm not sure that their work can be exceeded in that. I'm talking about Mars Crossing and First Landing. Now, my sentimental favorite is A Rose for Ecclesiastes, of course, which is not actually a book, but very Roger Zelazny. Another one that I thought about, and I thought maybe I should call this is certainly in my top 10, is William Hartwell's Mars Underground, which does, I think, that doesn't end with them suddenly discovering. Is there? Please tell me there's no aliens at the end of that. Please tell me there are aliens. Oh, please no. Okay, never mind. Forget it.
It's nevertheless a good novel by a really good astronomer.
Yes. Joe Haldeman has a current. Is it a trilogy? Marsbound. Yeah, and that has aliens that come in fairly soon, but they're really kind of cool aliens, so I guess it's all right. They're mean, and I think aliens should be mean in a sort of a weird way. So what are we left with? I think the one I have to put at the top is Frederick Pohl's Man Plus. I have not read it recently. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how unrealistic it is. I think the idea of being able to surgically, because it isn't genetic at all, surgically modify a human being so he can live in Martian conditions is pretty weird, and I don't know whether that's something that, well, present-day technology is not relevant because it's supposed to be the future. I don't know, and I don't know whether Pohl was aware of the extremeness of the extreme environment of Mars, so I don't know. I can't say that, but I think, and the reason that I would say that this is a novel that really inspires me a lot is that it was about, he got dragged into it, the main character, but at the same time, what he was willing to do, finally, to be able to live where nobody had ever been before. Nobody had walked naked before. And that final scene when he realizes what he has become and how he is free in a way that no human being has ever been before. It's just a very, very thrilling ending.
Hold on to the microphone. I'm glad part of the panel agrees with me. This is my personal copy of the trilogy, Robinson's trilogy. And as you can see, if you're close enough, Red Mars is pretty well battered and bruised and stained and creased and wrinkled because it was red. Green Mars, the bookmark is on about page 10 and got no further. Yeah. And Blue Mars is totally pristine. Not a page opened. And they've sat on my bookshelf since I finished Red Mars, basically, almost 10 years ago. Final question to the panel from me, and then we will open it up to the floor. And we'll start with Mary. What is your favorite science fiction work? Mars included, Mars excluded, whatever you like.
You mean aside from Paradise Lost? Or the Bible? Or, I didn't say it.
No, well, there's science fiction in the Bible too.
I always vacillate between a short story, actually, called Bloodchild by Octavia Butler, which is not about Mars, and Left Hand of Darkness, which is Ursula Le Guin's Left Hand of Darkness, which is not about Mars, but is about another planet, at least. And I'm sorry, I still am very, very fond of those. I'm very fond of the Mars novels, too, but, sometimes you ask the question, so that was the answer.
That's right. Okay. Doctor.
Well, Without thinking about it too deeply, the answer that came into my mind was the original Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov. And a few other things stick out in my mind as things I really liked. There was a Arthur Clarke collection of stories that went under the title Expedition to Earth, which I thought were really superb. And some of them stick in my mind a lot still. They're really very good. And also one short novel by Clarke, which was called Earthlight. And which there's a really funny story about, if I'll give it a minute.
Earthlight was about the revolution of the lunar colonists.
Yes, it was about a revolution of the lunar colonists. And by the way, for a lunar revolution, the moon is a harsh mistress is pretty good too. Okay, but the thing about Earthlight is the drama takes place in an observatory in the crater Archimedes on the moon. And in 1970, Apollo astronauts visited the crater Archimedes. And one of them had read Earthlight, and he commented from the moon, this is the crater Archimedes that was in Arthur Clarke's novel Earthlight. And wouldn't he be proud to know that we were actually going here if he was still alive today? And of course, Arthur Clarke was very much alive in 1970. In fact, he was alive until just a couple of years ago. So he wrote in a comment, and he says, I am, very proud, I'm also alive. So you're right. But says, I wrote that story while I was manning a radar battery in London during the Blitz, okay, and writing it at night, staying up, waiting for German bombers. And if someone had told me then that just 30 years later people would be walking around in Archimedes, I would have thought it was the wildest poppycock anyone had ever said. Okay, and if you think about that, 30 years from the Blitz to walking in Archimedes, it's been 40 years since then.
Yes.
Okay, and nothing in the way of comparable progress has occurred, or any, since that time.
Well, I have to say, I think I was unfairly influenced as a child by the works of Larry Niven, who pretty much reinvented hard science fiction in the late 1960s. So I would probably name some of Larry Niven's works, perhaps Ringworld as my favorite. I should really go back and reread all of them again sometime. Ringworld, of course, isn't where you should start with the works of Larry Niven. I would start probably with Neutron Star, his collection of short stories. There's a lot of other works that influenced me very much when I was young. I was very impressed with Paul Anderson's book, Tau Zero, that talked about the sort of physics of a ram-scoop ship and tried to really explain the theory of relativity to me, who was 13 years old. And I was very impressed with it. I kind of wish somewhat later that he would have used the same terminology that physicists use, rather than using his own terminology, which would have made it a little bit easier to slide into real physics. But it really is a novel that literally takes you to the end of the universe and explains it in scientific terms. Other than that, there's just so many science fiction works out there. It's hard to even think about them all, hard to name them all.
Well, Ringworld is certainly very high on my list as well. Another book that's been very influential on me, and which I reread with some frequency, is by the British writer Ian M. Banks. It's a book called Consider Phlebas, which is the first published book of the culture, a star-spanning culture, as you might have guessed from the name, which it's a post-scarcity economy. This is science fantasy. It is not hard science fiction by any stretch of the imagination, but it is full of incredibly cool concepts and ships with names like Ultimate Ship the Second and yes, I mean business. Another one of my favorite books is the collected short fiction of Cordwainer Smith, which is again science fantasy rather than hard science fiction, but he has a marvelous sense of strangeness and a great twist of description. The individual stories are all just mind-blowing, and there may be a visit to Mars in there somewhere, but it is not about the planets, and it is not about real astronomy. It's all about people and what we do to each other and how we affect each other as things get stranger and stranger.
My personal favorite is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Enough said. 42. With that...
Where's your towel?
Yeah, it's packed somewhere. Actually, I think I have it. Yes, I do. I have my towel.
You're ready.
It's very small, but I have my towel.
Okay, so long and thanks for all.
That's right.
Now, there's a hoopy fruit that really knows where his towels are.
With that, I'd like to open it up to the audience. If you want to step up to the microphone, if you've got any questions for the panel, and if you have a specific panelist you want to ask, then name the panelist, otherwise direct to me and I will ask the panelists.
Okay. My wife is a great lover of great literature and has been reading for decades, and she came up, she doesn't like science fiction. And so she pointed out to me, nobody predicted the internet. All these brilliant writers writing science fiction. Well, no. H.G. Wells did, I finally found out researching in 1936 the World Brain. All you learned gentlemen and ladies up here, go right to the leading edge of your creativity, imagination, everything else. What have we missed about Mars or technology that's a complete game changer? Not a magic new device that levitates us there tomorrow. I mean, but just right at the leading edge of your imagination, what has everybody else missed? The game changer. Okay?
What game changer has been missed by everybody else? Well, let's start down at the other end with Mary. Oh, sorry.
I think the one thing that the authors really miss is the economic uses of Mars and reasons people would go there. Sure, religious freedom, freedom to do illegal things. I mean, I think that's a big motivator. Going anywhere distant is doing illegal things and hiding money and experimenting with drugs and doing experiments that, because if you design some sort of plague that's going to wipe out humanity, it's kind of a shame even if you do it on the moon. But you do it on Mars and it gets loose and no problem. And nobody ever thinks about this, but it's a really wonderful driver for economic development on Mars. So I think a lot of people don't think about those basic things that would happen on Mars. And I know it sounds like, oh, well, these are just monsters, but they are. That's why people go to extreme environments. Also, you're talking about those hydrothermal vents, and there could be gold there, and nobody much talks about that. And I don't know whether they were hydrothermal vents, but they said, oh, well, they found this little piece of, what is it, opaline? That might be, from, I don't know. So that's something I think they're going to find. And then, of course, my husband, and I hope I'm not stealing his thunder, but he says there's going to be diamonds there. You're going to find diamonds. I don't know. I hope I didn't steal your thunder, because you'll think of something even weirder, I'm sure. Anyway.
All right. Why don't we just do one answer to each question? That way, get more questioners.
All right.
Question?
Next.
Okay, I have a comment, and I'm sorry for breaking the protocol here. I got kind of excited, and I came in late, and I didn't know where we were. However, when you were talking about the movies, I was one of the judges for the University Rover contest in June, and while we were there, Disney was making a movie about Mars, and who's the person who did the Tarzan books?
Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Anyway, it was about John, whatever his name, at Mars, and it's going to be coming up one of these days. Yeah. Right, yeah, and they were right down there, right by the hab. I mean, you could see them from the hab. I mean, one of their sets, and the other set was right down where pretty close to we were doing the rover stuff. So at least we know there's something exciting coming about Mars.
How are the actors dressed?